Greetings, everyone, and let us partake into a journey to the blue sky. My name is Patricia.
My name is Aaron.
And today we're going to be doing another retrospective looking back on a studio that has done some of the most well-known animated films of all time. So over the years, we've looked at Pixar and DreamWorks, and we've even dabbled here and there with the animations of the Roald Dahl's adaptations. But this time around, we're going to be talking about an animation studio that I would say has had a legacy of its own right, and that would be Blue Sky Studios.
Yeah. So now a part of Disney at the moment. So I'm going to be honest with everybody. The reason why we're now somewhat able to kind of catch up with it is because now all the Blue Sky movies are now on Disney Plus.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So we're going to start from the very beginning, the Ice Age, if you will. So all the way back at the Ice Age.
Yes.
So by the way, not the literal Ice Age. Like,
no.
We are talking about.
I mean, right now we're in a global warming, so everything is like hot and sticky and just overwhelmingly just red with heat. So, I think a lot of people will be like, man, I wish there was an ice age right now so that things can actually cool down.
Yeah, well, I think we can try and cool down with this movie at least. So, okay, so Ice Age, for everyone who doesn't know, is a 2002 American computer-animated adventure comedy film produced by Blue Sky Studios, of course. And this is its debut film with 20th Century Fox. So, for those of you wondering why it is now able to be shown on Disney Plus, is because 20th Century Fox was acquired by Disney, and now basically they get their inventory. So this is one of the movies that they now have access to.
Yeah.
So the film was directed by Chris Wedge, and by the way, this was his dictatorial debut. And looking back at it now, like it must be pretty nervous now to be a director, directing something for the very first time, because you have no idea what it's gonna turn out to be.
Yeah.
And for Chris Wedge to stumble upon, not stumble upon, I think to go out to do something, like Ice Age, where, when you really strip it down, it's three guys looking after a baby. And so
it's like three men and a baby.
Three men and a baby, yeah, exactly. So they took, they took this concept of three men and a baby, and they basically packaged it into a animated film. Now, that sounds ridiculous enough as it is, but funnily enough, it actually works.
Yeah,
and
it does actually work.
And it works very well, actually. So, the whole premise of Ice Age is that we are basically on Manfred the mammoth, Sid the sloth, and Diego the saber-tooth tiger. And so how it comes to be is that at the very beginning, actually, and one thing you'll notice throughout these Ice Age movies is that we always get these in-between sketches that take place. And cutaways like into sketches, I don't think is necessarily a new thing. Various other movies have done it in the past.
Yeah.
I remember, I think RoboCop, did like the whole, commercials where
they did the commercials.
Things. So there've been, things like that. And also you have side plots as well in movies, and they don't necessarily count as cutaways, but it keeps the story kind of fresh and going.
Right.
Like that. So the sketches that appear in this are actually the very beginning of the movie. So we are first introduced to a squirrel known as Scratch. And by the way, we don't know him as Scratch. We basically just know him at the very beginning, know him as the squirrel.
Yeah, he's just the squirrel who's just chasing a nut, who happens to be voiced by Cridge West himself.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes into Tex Avery, kind of the 5-minute cartoons that were reminiscent of the early theater that we get there. So that's how it all kind of gets it's kind of portrayed in this movie, and which I think is a very wonderful touch, I think I would say, because it's nice to have a bit of, I guess one thing that that is good to break up the monotony of Ice Age, I think, is that you have these little segments where you can just cut away to. And I think that kind of breaks up, the journey, I think, in this movie.
Yeah, so apparently, according to an article dating back to 2017 called Ice Age, The Story Behind the Story, apparently Michael J. Wilson's daughter, Michael J. Wilson, who happens to be one of the screenwriters for Ice Age, he said that the inspiration for Scrat came from his daughter when she came up with the idea of mixing an animal between a squirrel and a rat, and that it was obsessed with an acorn. And so originally they were going to have it talk, but they decided to scrap it and just have it more geared towards, slapstick slapstick comedy to kind of like make up for the fact that, hey, we have this road trip movie with a bunch of guys who are trying to have this huge epic adventure, getting a baby over to the other side where it meets up with its village right before they go away. So yeah, it's kind of interesting about how this, movie came to be. So this was originally going to be a 2D animated film by Fox Animation Studios. That's the same animation studios that Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were going to be producing films such as Anastasia and Titan AE. But unfortunately, due to the massive bomb that was Titan AE, they actually rearranged it into having Blue Sky produce it. And at the time, Blue Sky were only known for either doing commercials or doing the animation for an animated show called Joe's Apartment. So this was like a big deal in which like Fox knew that at that time, 3D animation was really, really huge. And they saw what Pixar did with Toy Story. They saw what DreamWorks did with Ants, and they wanted to get into it. But hey, 2D animation, they saw, especially with Titan AE, that it was no longer profitable and it was no longer big. So 2002, that would have been the same year that Monsters Inc. would have been out, and 2002 would have been the same year that let's see, which DreamWorks movie that would have been. That probably would have been either, I think it was Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, Pixar would have been like the major, competitor in terms of like 3D animation. It's like, yeah, this is the one that is getting all the acclaim. This is the one that's getting millions upon millions of dollars. This is the one that critics are just absolutely going nuts over. 3D is the future. And Fox basically saw this and they were like, okay, we're going to let go of Fox Animation Studios. Don Bluth and Gary Goldman are pretty much out, and Chris Wedge and Blue Sky and Ice Age are in.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to feel about that really, because, like, I mean, if you look at Ice Age, I mean, like, yeah, the 3D animation, I mean, I've got to be honest with you, is like it doesn't age as well as like the 3D animation as that we have today. I mean, like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, like, it's still, one thing I would say is that it concentrates more on the narrative, and it concentrates on like the back and forth between our characters. The 3D is more just like it's there to like it's the thing at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like I mean, even if it was a 2D animated movie, I still think it would probably still be like the same Ice Age. I don't think it would necessarily be like any massively different.
I mean, the only difference would have been is that if Don Bluth and Gary Goldman would have been a part of it, then we would have seen Manny, Sid, and Diego with the Don Bluth animation style.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But I mean, so the one thing I would say is, like, I mean, obviously they went 3D because obviously Pixar was doing it, and which I think is a sort of kind of a crappy excuse really for like saying, oh hey, let's just make this 3D.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that was the way to go back then because Disney was not doing very well. I mean, we already saw with Lilo and Stitch would have been out at the time, but still, I mean, like Disney was struggling because Pixar was dominating, and then DreamWorks would have a 1-2 punch with Shrek a year prior. So it's like they knew that after the flop that was Titan AE about 2 years prior, they were like, yeah, we need to be able to catch in with the crowd. We need to be able to make our stuff 3D because apparently that's what everybody wants.
Yeah. So, I just think with, because it kind of reminds me, like, remember the conversation we had with, about the Angry Video Game episode where he talked about, I can't remember exactly which one it was. I think maybe it was the Atari Jaguar episode. I think it was, and when they were talking about, like, changing over from, like, the NES and, the Master System over to, the Super Nintendo and the Sega.
Oh yeah,
Genesis.
yeah. He was
And
talking about graphics aren't everything.
Graphics aren't everything, and like it kind of like changed our perception of games. Like the graphics have to be better, not necessarily have to be a good game. Thankfully, Ice Age doesn't suffer from that. Like it's still a good movie that tells a good story, and just because it has better graphics doesn't necessarily mean that it scoops out like either on the story or the way that you feel about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when it comes to like the first movies out of these animation studios, like Toy Story and Ice Age. I mean, all of them, they look kind of rough in comparison to today's CGI, but what would you say aged the best out of the three?
I mean, so Ice Age, Toy Story, and
Ants.
And Ants. I would say Ants probably has a more. Well, Ants has a unique style. Like, it's
Yeah, it does have a
darker.
unique-
It's like, you can see, the lighting and the shadow and like the night and day and things like that. I mean, not to say you can't see that in Ice Age, and not to say you can't say that you see that in Toy Story, but I mean, you can tell that Toy Story has like, it's on today's 4K mega televisions that we have today. You can tell, you see the choppy kind of like frame rate and things like that.
And in addition to that, also, like if you were to look at the humans, they look really odd. And also,
exactly.
if you were to look at Scud, which is Sid's dog, it looks really weird. It's like a whole bunch of shapes that are just collided together.
Yeah, Scud, I mean, I was supposed to kind of look intimidating, so I think it was becoming like, this kind of like awkward kind of like looking dog, I think, it kind of like adds to kind of like, the factor, I guess you could say, of Scud. But I think in regards to Ice Age, I mean, you can, you can see the fur textures, like they don't seem to like, unless they like force it, like it doesn't seem to, they don't seem to move as naturally.
No, they
like,
don't.
It's not like Monsters Inc.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. would have been around this a year before then, and it actually had much better hair textures on Sully than Manny.
Well, I mean, on top of that, I think the technology that they had at the time, like they spent ages training this fur to like say this is how it reacts in all these environments. Do you remember like in the documentary of Monsters Inc. when they showed you like the demo of Sully like getting involved, like getting hit by all sorts of things, like tripping over things like that, and they were training the same way that they had to do with Violet in The Incredibles. Like they had to train her hair to like move in the way that it does because before it was like the computer just couldn't handle it. It was just like it was moving like
And the same thing happened with Merida with Brave, in which her hair with it being really really bouncy and her riding in horses and her running around and all that kind of stuff, they had to do the same technology, but they had actually improved on it.
Exactly. So I mean, Ice Age is you can sort of notice the flaws a bit more, but I mean, in regards to like the way that it's textured, I mean, like it's not it's kind of like your average video game, really. When you look at the way that it kind of looks like, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just there. It's at least it's something, and it's not unpleasant to look at. Like there's been various other 3D movies that are like been very unpleasant to to look at today, but Ice Age I think still holds up. I think in regards to that, like you can see that it looks a bit dated, but not too much.
I would say that the snow textures hold up, and so does the ice textures.
Yeah.
But I would say in terms of like the character's fur, not so much. It does look a little bit more flattened, especially when you consider that a year before then we had Monsters Inc., in which you had like the detail with the fur. But yeah, I would say that story is definitely one that still holds up and still one that people regarded as like one of the best things that Ice Age has to offer and why people still go back to it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I think Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, I think, released in 2001, actually, thinking about it. So that was a year before Ice Age, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so I think, I think you and I actually commented, I think, in Search of the Crystal Skull, that Jimmy Neutron didn't hold up as well. I think,
no, it didn't. And, this was Nickelodeon's first CGI movie as well. I guess we actually should talk about that because you had Pixar, which is 95, DreamWorks, which is 98. Nickelodeon had their first 3D animation film in 2001. So, and then, you have Ice Age with the Blue Sky that came out in 2002. So, as mentioned earlier, I mean, 3D was the future. And I guess this is where they went with it. And, as a first attempt, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think in regards to, I mean, if we had to rank the first ever CG movies that went to theaters, I mean Blue Sky's Ice Age it's not like on the very top, and it's not like on the very
it's in the
bottom.
middle.
It's in the middle, yeah, exactly. And so it's not the worst, it's not the best, but like it's just there to say this is acceptable form of 3D animation at the time.
Yeah, but they would only continue to get better and better as time goes on.
Exactly, yeah. So we've talked about the graphics, I guess you could say, of this movie, and I mean the next thing is the story itself.
Yeah.
So you have three guys who stumble across this baby, and two of them are wanting to get it back to the humans and at Glacier's Peak, and then there's one that has an ulterior motive, saying because he wants to basically get revenge for all the times that the humans have killed all this pack.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of There's that narrative, but at the same time, I mean, like you put that to one side. By the way, that whole thing gets put aside quite a few times actually in the movie, and it's only kind of brought up like maybe two or three times.
Yeah, like around two or three times. I mean, we have Soto, who is the leader of the saber-toothed tiger pack, and the reason why he wants to go after the baby is because he is the son of the leader of the human pack, and the human pack had killed off most of the saber-toothed tigers, and so they want to get revenge. And so Soto tasks Diego, who says, I want you to get me the baby, and that way I can kill it. And they ambush the entire village, and so they basically escape, and unfortunately they weren't able to get the baby because the mother holds on to the baby and she jumps off of the waterfall. And then we cut to Manny, who sees the woman taking the baby over and, basically with her eyes, with no talking whatsoever, saying, please protect my baby. And he nods his head, and then she disappears. So that means that she's dead.
Yeah, it's so funny that, this is a movie where the humans don't talk, but the animals do. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I've noticed that. I have, indeed. And I think that, something that I wish that Disney's Dinosaur would have done is that I wish they would have been a little bit more clever with, the fact that if the animals were going to talk, that they would actually have something really interesting to say or something funny to say. And Ice Age achieves this with both. You have Manny, who's basically very sarcastic. He's kind of like the loner. In fact, when Aaron and I were both watching this, seeing the dynamic between Manny and Sid, we were kind of reminded, this feels like Shrek and Donkey.
Yeah, but I mean, it is actually Shrek and Donkey when you really think about it.
Think about it.
Manny didn't want Sid to begin with, and
no, he
neither
didn't.
did Shrek. He didn't want Donkey.
Think about it. Okay, here is how Sid and Manny first met. You see, Sid was being chased by a bunch of rhinoceroses. I think that's what they are. And then Manny just so happens to be in the way, and then Sid runs behind him saying, yeah, protect me. What are you going to do about it? And then so Manny looks at them, and then so they were like, you know what? You're just not worth it. Here's what happened with Shrek. Shrek was in the forest, and he was just putting up his wanted posters. Donkey was running into him, running behind him, because a whole bunch of soldiers who were going to capture him and going to sell him over to Duloc. And then Shrek was like, oh, really? You and what army? And so they ran away. And then both Manny and Donkey went over to, both Sid and Donkey went over to Manny and Shrek respectfully. And they were like, oh, man, you were really cool. You saved my life. We can be best friends. And they were like, no, just go away. Leave me alone. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I would say that I think Manny probably had a bit more of a stronger, moments, I think, in that compared to Shrek. Because Shrek basically just said, he didn't actually fight the people actually trying to get hold of either him or, Donkey. Like, but, with regards to Manny, he had to fight the rhinos.
It made a lot of sense because, one, it was the Ice Age, and two, he was standing up for himself. And, for humans, it's like, who's going to fight an ogre?
Yeah, exactly. But I think, you got more action. I think in the meetup between Manny and Sid compared to Shrek and Donkey. Not to say you're going to action later on in Shrek, but I think if I had to say who had the stronger kind of like opening, I guess you could say of both of them coming together. I think probably Manny and Sid. I think probably had both always be stronger than Donkey and Shrek.
Yeah, but I would say when it comes to like more quotable lines, Donkey and Shrek have it beat.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, who doesn't remember about making waffles and I like that boulder. That's a really nice boulder.
I mean, we should talk about that because, while Shrek probably, somewhat did warm up a bit more to Donkey, I think, further, more, closer into the movie, it took a while for Manny and Sid to, I don't think Manny and Sid really kind of really got, became friends. I think so, the final third of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was just Manny was just trying to get rid of Sid and also get rid of this baby that he's also now got as well, and also want to get rid of Diego at the same time. So he was just desperate to say, okay, I'm just gonna do this, because the faster I do it, the freer I'm gonna become and be able to do whatever I want. But I think though, even that was his front. In regards to doing that, emotionally, I don't think that he was there. I think he did really have a connection to that that baby, or else he wouldn't have been doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
So like, and then later on, we'll get into later on into the film because that's quite a significant part of the movie. We'll talk about that probably later on.
Yeah.
But in regards to Manny, in regards to Sid, in regards to the dead dynamic, I mean, it doesn't really properly come together until a lot later on in the film. Dare I say, like the very very beginning of the final act. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that the introduction with Diego was actually pretty important too. So when he sees that Manny and Sid have the baby, and so he was like, he needed to think of a more clever way of being able to get the baby without, him just attacking alone, because it was only just him. And so he knew he didn't stand a chance against Manny. And so he decides to trick Manny and Sid saying, oh, I know exactly where the humans are headed. They're heading over to a mountain called Half Peak because, that's where the humans are going to be staying at right before they move on to the next place. And we need to get there in a few days, otherwise it's too late. And so there's another plan involving with Diego telling Soto and the rest of the Sabertooths, meet us at Half Peak, and you'll not only get the baby, but you'll also get a mammoth for you to eat.
Well, that's later on in the movie.
Yes,
He
it is.
introduces the mammoth side of it. But in regards to Diego being part of this, like he immediately sees Sid, or initially, but then thinks he's be able to get the baby off him through that. But then he realizes that Manny's not far behind. And it's only because that's the dynamic of this. Like, he sees Sid as the weak link and the person he can get the baby off, but he can't because Manny's there.
Right.
And so Manny is the reason why he's having to, convert his mannerisms to say, oh, I'm sorry, I was just trying to take the baby back to the humans. And so he lies to Manny about his intentions, but, when the minute he goes around Sid, he immediately lets his real, personality actually come out. They've actually noticed that, actually, throughout the movie, that, when Manny's not around, Diego reverts back to, his bad guy self, if you will. And so he's not afraid to, bite Sid if need be. He's not afraid to, give snarky remarks to Sid. He's not afraid to, even threaten Sid. At many points, indirectly.
We have this, with the scene where the rhinos come back, and then we have Diego who decides to put his neck around Sid to make it look like he's dead.
Yeah.
And then when the rhinos go away disappointed, you have Sid saying, "Okay, you can let me go," and then he just holds on to him. He doesn't let go. He just holds on to him tightly until eventually Sid panics and he's like, get off of me. Seriously, get off of me. And then finally he gets him off. And then he was like, oh man, I'm so relieved that you weren't going to eat me. And then Diego says, I don't eat junk food.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's you can see amongst the three. I mean, that's the great thing about the building this up. The three the 3-man dynamic that they have here. Like, one bounces off the other and then bounces to the other and then bounces back. It's like this whole triangle that takes place in that. It's like, that's a great, way of, that's just great character, putting characters together, making them unique and then putting them together and then, being able to, build off of one another. The one thing that gets lost in the shuffle, I think, is basically the baby, because that's just kind of like the plot device to kind of keep the thing going.
Unfortunately, that's the thing, is the baby is a plot device.
I mean, it's a baby, so you don't expect it to have any character or anything like that. It's not going to be like what's his name? The baby and Who Framed Roger Rabbit or anything.
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
Baby Herman.
Baby Herman, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to be Baby Herman. It's not going to it's not going to have a voice. It's not going to be snarky remarks. It's just going to be snappy remarks. It's just going to be there and act like a baby, really. And so it's there to drive the story forward. So you have these three. They go and then you have the baby crying at one point, and so they need to find, and also you can see their different ideas of why is the baby crying? It's like Sid thinks that he just needs playing with, and or Diego thinks it needs playing with, and then Manny says, oh, maybe we're one of those diaper thingies. It's like so it's you get that whole routine currently going on as well, and it's there are also typical guys in this, oh, I have to, why do I have to be the poop checker, and and why do I have to do this, and and they're all grossed out by the idea his diaper has got those got poop in it and things like that. That's a hilarious thing. And so then after that we get to, I think, what's probably my favorite part of the movie, and that's the Dodo scene.
Oh, and, the Dodo scene. That scene was absolutely crazy. You have these really dumb birds who are trying to survive, and they're just collecting, basically these bits of food so that they can be able to survive. and that's the only thing that the baby will eat. It's like, oh wow, melons, that looks really good. I'm sure the baby would love these because the baby's hungry. And then you have these dodos who are saying, these are my melons, these are our melons, don't take our melons. We've been working really hard for these melons. And so as time goes on, each of the melons start going off bit by bit, and then finally there's only one left, and pretty much the dodos die.
Yeah, it was pretty morbid when you really think about it, but I mean, the whole joke is like, the dodos were going to be extinct anyway.
Yeah,
so,
they were going to be extinct eventually.
Yeah, one thing I like to think of, like, it's only like those pack of dodos that are basically back. I mean, also, I'm really sure, like, in later movies, we actually do see other dodos.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so like maybe this colony.
Yeah, because the dodos don't get extinct until much, much later on.
In the movie, yeah, exactly. So I mean, like they do live to find another day, except
except those.
Except those. So, but I mean, also in that we get like unfortunately you do get like your stereotypical, oh hey, let's throw a joke in here, for let's do this joke and let's do that
like
joke.
The scene where Sid meets up with a whole bunch of other lemurs and they're in this mud tub and he's like, oh yeah, look at me, I have the baby and I'm gonna use the baby as a magnet so I can pick up chicks.
Yeah, but even then, like they also have bringing back to the Dodo scene. They even have like the whole like they do like the whole sports thing where like they pretend like it's a football game and Sid runs with the melon, like he bowls over a load of like dodos and things like that, which I will admit actually did come out of nowhere, because right now we've been introduced to Sid like the very going into the first act, and like we know that he's no many people like him, he's totally useless, and he basically has a caring heart, and that's basically about that. He's Marty from Captain Planet, basically. Like,
oh my god,
he's he shows basically some character in this scene, even though it is kind of like stereotypical like feel good sports movie kind of like
you have the bowling segment. You have the American football, and even later on you have skiing and snowboarding because extreme sports.
Yeah. So, by the way, that's a character trait that actually goes throughout all the other movies, because you do see Sid's actually skating in like in other places. And so he does the whole thing, like everyone shares, and then he smashes the melon on the floor, and like he goes, Sid, now we've got to find more food, which is a hilarious end to the bit. Actually, I did laugh at that. And but funnily enough, like even like Sid just unintentionally finds a way for the baby to eat the food, and if anything, just gets entertained by a bunch of dodos, further dying at the very end of the segment.
Right.
So then we get to the point where they actually do meet the mud pits and everything, and so that became very dated, I think, very quickly. I think we can all say.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh wow, look at me. I'm gonna go into this mud pit, and it's gonna look like a hot tub, except that it's mud, and I'm gonna be surrounded by these lemur chicks, and they're gonna be really impressed because I can take care of a baby.
I thought they were other sloths. I thought.
Oh yeah, like sloths. I meant to say sloths.
So which kind of really doesn't make all that much sense, because in the beginning of the movie you can see all the animals making their way to the south.
Yeah,
so
they're making their way to the south.
Why
so
are these ones staying behind?
I don't know. I mean, the whole point of it is that they're trying to move south so that they can reach warmer climates. Oh my gosh, it's almost like the Land Before Time. We need to be able to reach over to the Great Valley because we have no food. So I guess it's kind of like we need to be able to go south because we need to find food and we need to go into warmer climates. So yeah, it's kind of like that almost.
Yeah. So, in regards to in regards to the whole, I mean that is a continuity error in itself, really. Like the fact that they say, oh hey, well, all these animals moving south, but some of them are staying behind for whatever reason. Not too sure.
I mean, maybe
for the sake of the plot. I don't know.
I guess maybe for the sake of the plot.
Yeah. So, we get to that bit before, also that Diego, actually, one thing we haven't messed out, actually, is that there's a lot of, there was actually a character that was cut out of Ice Age, and I think that was, it was like Sid's girlfriend that they had at the time. I can't remember exactly who played her and what the name of the character was, but you go like Sydney and like all the cut out scenes. And originally, she was supposed to be kind of like Sid was kind of like running away from her and trying he's trying to get away from her and that, and because He didn't want to migrate with her, and he couldn't find the the gumption to kind of like break up with her and stuff.
Right.
So, but then if she had stayed in the movie, and like you say that, she would have probably been out of that at the very probably in the second act, because in that with the bit when Sid kicks Diego and Diego bites him and he plays dead. And stuff that was for the rhinos, but originally that was supposed to be for Sydney. Sorry, not for Sydney. The girl,
girlfriend.
The girlfriend. I couldn't remember the character.
Yeah. But then instead, the reason why Sid is alone is because his family abandoned him. He woke up. He can't find his mom, his dad, his brothers, his sisters, his grandma, and he's looking around, and then he finally finds Manny, and he basically pals up with him because he's alone, and he's trying to find out where his family left to. So he was talking about oh yeah, my family does this all the time. They've abandoned me at least a few times a year. And so it's yeah, we're going to go into that. Let's just make the character even sadder than what he is.
Mm-hmm. So we get to this bit also. We also get to the bit where they do the whole there has to be a terrifying thing that happens to our characters, and that is that when they get on to, I guess, on top of a frozen volcano, and then the whole thing starts blowing up, and then we're immediately we're going from this whole very soft, very snowy, very hilarious kind of thing, and then all of a sudden we're just thrown into hell, that was very jarring, I think, when we got into that bit, but it was good that they built that up, because if they just constantly thrown them into danger the entire time, not to say that they haven't been doing it in the movie, but not this kind of epicness of danger, it really did build up towards that.
And also, it was very important for the relationship for Manny and Diego, because Diego was rescued by Manny when he was almost about to fall over toward the edge of the ice when it was breaking up.
Mm-hmm. And so, Diego actually said, why did you save me? It's and Manny basically said, well, that's what we do, as a pack.
That's what we do as a pack, and that's when it gave him more of an appreciation for Manny and saying wow, he's really a good guy. And it makes him change his mind about, his pack eating him.
Mm-hmm. So we get to the point where the next point I think is the
ice cave.
The ice cave, yeah, and so it looks like a museum basically of you
have all of these frozen dinosaurs, and then you have the sloths that go from a amoeba to the sloth, pre-sloth that Sid is, and then you have the UFO, and then the baby makes a Star Trek reference with Spock with his fingers.
I thought that was pretty cheap, but it doesn't surprise me actually that they did this, because I just learned this recently that for research the film development team actually took several trips to the Museum of Natural History, and no one will see that reference because I just winked at Patricia. We're back a dinosaur story.
We're back a dinosaur story.
Yeah, but they went to the Museum of Natural History, and I can guarantee you that's probably where the inspiration for the ice cave came from, because they had all these exhibits around where they can look at them and things like that, and then they learn more about what's going on with the with the passage of time. And then we get that, and then we get the scare. Actually, before we even get to that, we get the scary bit where the whole cave kind of collapses, and it looks like the icicles at the top are going to fall on our characters. And because they're all loose, and so that was a pretty scary thing in itself.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me.
That foreshadows basically to what's going to happen at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of when the icicles started falling down in Balto, in which when Balto and the sled dogs were going inside the cave so that they can be able to reach over to the other side, and there's a bunch of icicles that are falling down, and they need to be able to run right before the medicine gets broken off. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, except it was in 3D. But yeah, it was actually done pretty well. And also you have the ice physics was also done pretty well too, in which they were able to slide around, they were able to scratch it, and they were able to try to prevent them from sliding any further, but they can't. So yeah, it was actually a really memorable scene.
Mm-hmm. So so basically we're at that point, and so then we get to the point where after all that takes place. By the way, when they're doing for the whole slodum, the whole ice sliding thing, they do that you can see the Diego and Manny all they suddenly you see Diego's trying to get quick, get quicker than Manny to try and get the baby. And so that whole tension builds. It's because Diego's got that ulterior motive, and Manny also has his own motive as well, and Manny also is becoming very suspicious of of Diego as well. Like, you know,
he's always been suspicious of Diego. The moment that he met him, it's like, why would a saber-toothed tiger want a baby other than to eat him? I doubt that he has any needing of rescuing. But then he tells Manny, he's like, no, I know where the humans are going. You need me so that we can be able to go. And then he's like, oh, I know where the humans are going. They're going over to Half Peak, which is that mountainside where the humans reside. And he's like, yeah, but I know a quicker way to get over there. And they're only going to be there for 3 days. And then afterwards, they're going to be gone. And who knows where they're going to be going to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically, Diego is trying to convince Manny that even though you know where you're going, I know a faster way to get there.
We get one bit with the humans actually, where they show them like they are still trying to like search for like the saber-tooth that actually kidnapped his kid, and so then like one of them like, and by the way, this is all told without narrative, like without voice acting at all, and you can see. I mean, even though here's the thing about this, I don't like the design of the humans. I got to be honest with you. In this movie,
they look really weird.
They look very weird,
and the noses are very bulbous.
Yeah, and they move very awkwardly as well. If you notice, like it doesn't feel natural when they're moving around. And,
I mean, remember that human animation in 3D was not perfected yet.
Exactly. Yeah, like when.
I mean, there's a reason why Pixar waited until I guess The Incredibles to have a full-length movie with only humans, because for the most part they used either toys or bugs or monsters or fish. So they waited a while, and with even with like other 3D animations with DreamWorks, I mean, sure, we had, with Lord Farquaad, and then we had the soldiers. But for the most part, the focus was mostly on Shrek and Donkey, and I guess Fiona. But, that's like one human out of like dozens of them.
I guess that's a good actually. I mean, to be honest with you, though, I think didn't production on Ice Age start before the production on Shrek? Or am I thinking?
Oh, man, the production on Shrek was a long process, because I think it started
when did that start?
Well, I remember that it started around the mid-90s, because originally they were going to do 2D. Then they were going to do a mixture between like, what was it? Like 3D animation and stop motion backgrounds and stuff like that. But then that was terrible. And then after they did Ants, they were like, okay, we're going to do 3D instead.
Yeah.
And as we already know, we talked about this in DreamWorks and Dream Machine in the past, that all the people who are working on Prince of Egypt, and they thought that was going to be the magnum
big
opus.
Massive hit, and everybody basically who basically got punished basically ended up on the Shrek,
exactly.
project as well. Which I think was probably the blessing in disguise. I think for all.
Yeah,
of them,
it's kind of like the whole Lion King Pocahontas situation, in which they thought Pocahontas was going to be the big hit, but it turned out to be the Lion King.
Exactly, yeah. So, but in regards to the story development that took place for Ice Age, it actually began in 1999. So I think Ice Age has probably had a shorter production span.
It's a much more shorter production
span.
So
maybe, I mean, would it be... here's a question I think I have, which I don't know if I can answer, is that if Ice Age had a longer production time, it had a bit more time to kind of like, maybe refine the humans a bit more. Maybe they probably were a bit more, pleasing to the eye, I think.
Maybe if they had a larger budget too, because they started off with only like $59 million. And
how much did Shrek have at the time?
I think Shrek probably would have had the same amount of money, but at the time, remember, they did Ants already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they already had an idea on the makings of a 3D animation film, while Blue Sky, on the other hand, they did a few commercials, they did some animation for a TV show, but this was their first major film, so they were still trying to get their footing in.
Yeah. So, but by the way, even though the humans aren't all that pleasing to the eye, like, you can still see the emotion in them, and you can still, like, see that, they're real people in that sense. I mean, they're not my favorite looking humans by any stretch of the imagination, but, I mean, you can still definitely feel sorry for the dad in all of this, because, he's there, he's pained, like, he has this face of revenge on his, on him, but then, one of his colleagues basically just said, puts him on the shoulder and say, look, this isn't worth it anymore, and the snow's but you don't even have to, hear him talk. You can see that, here's how snowy the whole situation is, and like he's telling like, look, this isn't worth it. We need to keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he basically gives up and goes along with all the guys to go back to the other human settlement.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, he's trying to look for the saber-toothed tigers because his wife is dead, and he assumes that his son is dead, and he's the leader of the herd, and he needs to be strong for them, but at the same time he's falling apart, and he's like losing track on everybody else that's around him. I mean, he needs to know that even though that he lost his family, he still has a whole tribe that he needs to watch over, and they're in the middle of an ice age. Everything's freezing. They're humans. They can't survive for ice and snow for that long.
This is another plus for Ice Age. Like, the fact, even though it's like, there's slapstick and jokiness and things going on like that, and then you have like, the whole epic things with, with our heroes, there's still a serious story underneath that with the humans. Like, they're the serious characters in all of this pretty much. They're the ones that we, if you're looking for the serious story, they'd be the ones you'd be kind of like concentrating on.
Yeah.
While
And
all the silliness is going on.
And speaking of silliness and seriousness, we get that with finally when they reach over to Ice Peak, but it's getting dark, and so they need to be able to rest for the night. And also, not only is it getting dark, but also there's a severe storm that's happening. So they decide to make camp and settle into a cave where it has a bunch of cave paintings, and you have Sid who discovers fire. Wow.
Yeah. But while all that's going on, Sid is actually commentating on all the artwork, and then he stumbles upon one that includes one that looks like Manny.
Yeah.
And funny enough, it is Manny, and so you see, Sid's saying, "Oh, hey, look at this!" But here's his family, and here he all is happy, and we hadn't hit, and this is the bit where we realize why Manny is so miserable about his life, and Diego just stops him. The music plays up, and then the cave paintings on there start to come to life.
Yeah, it's very similar to Prince of Egypt. You remember in that scene in which when Moses has the dream, and he is in the style of the hieroglyphic paintings, and he's being chased by the Pharaoh's guards, and then he then concludes with him being as one of the babies that's falling into the Nile River, eaten by the crocodiles. It's kind of like a similar situation, except it's in cave painting form, where he's happy with his family, and then all of a sudden you have these human warriors who are going after the mammoths, and we see in that scene that his family was killed by humans and that he is literally the only one left.
Yeah, and so, by the way, this isn't a new thing, look at looking at something on a wall and then it all comes to life and everything like that. But, Ice Age does it so well that, you feel everything that's going on. And by the way, this all ties into, why Manny was probably so reluctant to help out this baby in the first place, because it comes from the species that took away his family. So, then he realizes that, the baby in itself also has got an idea of what happened, and feels also bad for what happened to Manny, and Manny realizes that. And then that emotional scene where he picks him up and hugs him, and he's got tears in his eyes, and everyone else is tearing up around him, and it's just so good.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so this is a lot of what we just spoken about so far with the storytelling with the humans without any narrative, and the whole the best storytelling that Ice Age actually does is when it's actually quiet and when it's actually telling it through the motions of the animation and not having any of his voice actors talk.
Yeah, unfortunately, from here on out, we're going to get a lot less of that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, we're coming towards the end of the movie, and we're now seeing, the Sabertooths talk about, what are they going to do? And because now they know that Manny is coming. So the leader of the pack, turns around and says, there's only one way to kill Manny, and that's to back him into a corner and then go for the throat. And, that plays out in the final, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Diego is having doubts about what is going on at the minute, because he's been through this emotional journey which has changed him. Mm-hmm. And so he turns around to Sid and turns around to Manny and starts telling him, saying, look, get down, I'm going to take you around this way. And Manny's all confused and says, well, what are you talking about? And then Diego basically says, at the bottom of the cliff there's an ambush waiting for you. And then it all just starts kicking off at that point. But here's the thing about this. Manny's ready to crush Diego, pretty much. And and also is rightfully questioning why he should trust Diego. And so he then says, well, I'm your only chance to get out of here, so you need to trust me. And I'm telling you the truth now. So, credit to Manny. He listens to what Diego has to say, and they come up with a plan of how to, get the baby away from the Sabertooth. Mm-hmm. So Sid has the baby and lures the Sabertooths away. And this is a bit when we get, the whole skiing, Sodom scene and things like that, which will be a part of, Sid's character going forward. He drops what we think is the baby, and it lands right in front of the leading saber-tooth tiger. And I'm sorry, I keep forgetting his name. Soto. It lands right in front of Soto, and then by the way, you believe that this is the baby at that one point because you've seen it swaddled before, and so you think it was that was it, but it turns it round and it actually is just a pile of snow, just as a snowman, and which I think was great. And so they try to get away, but obviously they catch up to them pretty quickly, and so it was only a small distraction that they can do for it. And so Diego is then put in the very awkward position of having to choose between his pack and Manny. And fair play to him, he chooses Manny. And unfortunately, he does pay for it because he ends up getting sliced open by, I think it's assumed that he's sliced open by.
We don't see it. There's no blood or anything like that.
That's the thing. You don't show any blood and gore. It's just it's funny. You show very little at all, but you still feel like it hurts. But then you have the Passion of the Christ, and then it's just oh yeah, all that really. I mean, it looks like it hurts, but that's way over the top. But I mean, Diego pretty much sacrifices himself to save Manny and to save the baby, pretty much. And but then it looks like that all is going to be lost. But Manny actually throws Soto, actually kills Soto. Actually,
he does.
When you think about it,
he throws Soto onto a cave, and then the cave shakes up a little bit with the icicles, and then the icicles fall, and it kills him.
Yeah, and so that was basically foreshadowed, in the mid movie, and so that's the great thing. I'm really glad that they did that because they played up the danger of the icicles. I think if they hadn't done that bit and they just kind of went with that, I don't think it would have had the same impact. I don't think.
It wouldn't have.
Yeah, it's it's just that you had to have the characters kind of worry about it in the initial stage, and then when it finally happens, you feel that, and so then all the other saber-tooths realize that that's what Manny's just done, and they just go for it. And so, as far as I'm aware, we're not gonna. I mean, we're not watched it. I mean, we've only watched the only initial Ice Age movie. So I don't know if these saber-tooths ever come back. I mean, I think that's the.
I think that's the end of them.
That's the end of them. Yeah. So interesting to see if they actually ever return. At a later point. But until then, we don't know.
Yeah.
But Diego. I mean, here's the thing about this. There was, from what I understand, in the initial discussion that whether because in the original pitch for Diego, apparently he was supposed to die in that, and then I think there was but however, when they did this, they put this in front of the test audience. A lot of kids burst into tears when the death was shown. So they thought, this is kind of our demo, so let's kind of let's not do that. So they had mind you, I don't know how to feel about this, given the fact that we had Diego in the later Ice Age movie, so I guess maybe it was a good call not to kill him off in the first movie. I don't know, but they have it where, they finally meet the humans, they finally give the baby over, and, by the way, the humans were ready to kill Manny as well.
Yeah, they were.
They were ready to finish him off, but, the human realizes that he brought the baby back to him, and he saw it as a sign. He's no, don't leave him alone. He's got my child. And by the way, all once again done without narrative, which I think is really cool. And so he gives the Manny the charm bracelet, and then they head off, and it's an emotional, basically. We've gone through this whole adventure with the baby and everything like that. And even though the baby's not really had any narrative or any talking or anything like that, where they still do the whole cutesy thing of oh hey you got me over the line and got me over here, and we've had this whole adventure now, and it's sad that it's finally over.
Yeah.
So they did that very well. I think that was very good. And but mind you, then we basically get the cop-out ending where Diego is not he's not dead. He's just a bit hurt, and he just needed arrested.
It's a flesh wound.
Yeah. So after the test audience basically teared up after the death. Denis Leary was warned that one of the producers that something like this would happen, and once it was proven true, they rewrote the scene to ensure that Diego survived. Yeah, so Denis Leary to the rescue, pretty much. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Mind you, it would have probably been up there with, like, the most sad deaths, if you think about it.
Yeah,
like, or the most
exactly.
noble deaths, if you will. Like, depending what YouTube channel you kind of like, watch, for these top 10 deaths. But
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Exactly.
so
yeah, it's kind of like Kerchak from Tarzan. It's like, oh, he rushed over to try to fight off against Clayton, and then he dies in Tarzan's arms, and he says like, forgive me that I never saw you as a son, and our pack needs you, and you need to protect them. It's like, what happens if he survived?
Exactly, yeah. But the movie ends. I mean, they finally decide to go south, and then they make the jokes about I could use some global warming right about now. It's like,
I smell a sequel.
Oh, exactly. So, that's the end of the movie.
I mean, hold on. We need to talk about the, end credits.
Yeah. So,
I know that we haven't really talked about Scrat that much in this discussion, but, I mean, it's a major continuity error, but you know what? Whatever. So basically, 20,000 years later, Scrat is now a frozen ice cube inside with the nut, and he goes into this tropical island, and then finally he slowly melts. The nut goes away into the ocean, then he sees a coconut, and then he basically replays what he did in the first scene of the movie where, he tries to break open the coconut, and then, the island is cracking, and now a volcano is about to erupt. And yeah, this kind of like contradicts what happens later on in the series, but we'll get there.
Okay. So, I mean, that then is the end of the movie. Like, we go into the credits, and this movie, I mean, just initially us watching it, like, it's a good movie. Good.
Absolutely,
it's a great way to start off.
Oh yeah, this is a great way of opening up. I mean, kudos for the likes of all these other animation studios who went into 3D. It's like, hey, this went really well. Pixar with Toy Story, amazing. DreamWorks with Ants, that was pretty good. And now we have Blue Sky with Ice Age. That was also amazing.
Well, whatever a production company does, like, it's always nerve-wracking when you go into your first movie or your first major project, and then, like, it finally comes out, and, like, it's either going to go three ways. It's either going to be really, really good, and everyone's going to give it a load of praise, and, like, you're going to have a success for the immediate future. It's going to go really, really badly, like, no one's going to like it, and that's the end of your studio, and basically you'll be doing, different, mediocre stuff, like, forever and a day.
Yeah.
Or basically it sits in the middle, like, and some people will appreciate it, and it'll have its cult following, and then you'll probably, maybe a couple, like, decade down the line, you'll probably do something else different for it, maybe, like,
sure.
In the midst of doing other smaller projects. But, no, so that's off to Blue Sky. Great, strong start to their movie career, pretty much, in regards to that. And also, it paid off as well, because, this, worldwide, first of all, this took about $60 million to make, pretty much, and also, you can stick advertising up and everything like that on top of that, like, but, worldwide, this thing made $383 million worldwide.
Yeah.
It was a huge success.
Absolutely. And it was even nominated for an Oscar for Best Animated Film.
Exactly. Like, accolades that also go into this. So it wasn't nominated for an Academy Award in 2003.
Yep.
The film was recognized by the American Film Associates for these lists. It is currently AFI's top 10 nominated animation films. So it's in all the animated films that have been nominated for awards. It's up there in the top 10.
Yeah.
For forever and a day.
Yeah, it's just, considering that it had a major competition. I mean, it was going up against Lilo and Stitch, Spirit, Treasure Planet, and Spirited Away, and Spirited Away won.
Exactly, yeah. And, to be fair, Spirited Away, like, was a huge movie, I think, for Studio Ghibli. So, like, they, I think, unfortunately, Ice Age, I think, probably came at the wrong time, I think, in regards to, awards. So, like, Spirited Away came out and just blew everyone away, and then they got an Academy Award, pretty much, for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It makes me wonder, like, if they probably, if they released the movie maybe like a year later, maybe. Like, I mean, I don't know what was going on, at the time, but...
I mean, I'm sure that if it would have came out like a year later, I mean, that's considering that a year later, that would have been 2003, so it would have been going up against Brother Bear, The Triplets of Belleville, and Finding Nemo.
Yeah, like, I mean, the only thing you probably have to worry about is Finding Nemo. Dare I say, I mean, like, you probably would disagree with me, but, Ice Age against Finding Nemo... Like, I mean, Finding Nemo is a great movie, but Would it have like, outstripped, Ice Age at the Academy Awards? I don't know. Like, it'd be an interesting discussion, I think, in itself.
Yeah, I think Finding Nemo would have still won.
I think he probably would have done, yeah, but I think, I think Ice Age, I think, probably would have given it some serious competition.
Oh yeah, it would have given it a run for its money.
Yeah, it would have been a shock to Pixar if it come out in that year and if Ice Age had won. Like, it would probably give Pixar something to think about. I probably would imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I unfortunately, it wouldn't be the case in which they would ever have a chance to win any Oscars because I mean, as we all know, Pixar pretty much take over the entire thing, or Disney. There have been a few exceptions, like examples like Rango, or Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit and Happy Feet. But for the most part, you would either have Disney or Pixar.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like what Jack Black says, and I'm sure we said this multiple times before. Like, he went to do raise an award to raise an award for someone, and he said, how do I make my money? Well, I make a DreamWorks per film, and then I bet it all on Pixar at the Academy Awards, and that's
So I mean, we had DreamWorks winning a few times. They won for Shrek, they won for Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and they won for that's pretty much it. So yeah, they won twice. And then we have Spirited Away, which is Studio Ghibli, and then we have Happy Feet, which is Sony, and then we have Rango, which is Nickelodeon movies, and then we have Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse, which is a Sony film. So yeah, unfortunately, Blue Sky would never win an Oscar for a Best Animated Film, even though it was nominated a few times.
Yeah. Okay then, well, that's pretty much settles it for Ice Age. So, a very strong start for Blue Sky Studios, and but I think the next movie that we're going to be digging into will be Robots.
Yeah, there's going to be a pattern that you're going to be listening to in this podcast. So every time that we talk about an additional movie, we're going to go straight over to another Ice Age movie. So we're going to have Ice Age, Robots, Ice Age, and then another movie, Ice Age, and then another movie, and then Ice Age. You'll get the point.
You get the point, yeah.
So yeah, we won't be away from Ice Age for very long.
Yeah. But until then, we will once again journey to the blue sky very, very shortly. And so look out for Robin Williams' addition to the Blue Sky Library.
Now, that'll be really interesting.
Very interesting indeed.
Okay, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.